Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. My name is Anthony and I'm a senior engineer and a tech founder. And I'm going to tell you guys the story of how I started an esports business 4 years ago. It's still running today, even though I'm starting another startup. It's still there, it's not going anywhere. And I wanted to tell you guys how it came to be, what it was like doing it. And I'll give you guys a quick rundown of what it was. So basically it's an esports. And if you're not familiar with esports, it's like competitive gaming. Riot Games, who is the people that made League of Legends, they were making a new game called Valorant. And I'm like, oh man, Riot really knows how to run an esport. We could make something and get in at the bottom and really build something that could be big. So me and another engineering friend who I met at one of my jobs at the time decided to build this thing. And we started off as just a basic news site, but we very quickly went into pretty much covering matches. So if you wanted to see stats about your favorite teams, or you wanted to go and find out when they were playing next, or you wanted to check an event and look at the bracket and see who's playing who next, or who won this event and stuff like that, that was what our site was supposed to be. And we essentially turned it from that. We later sort of pivoted into providing analytics for professional teams. And to this day, we still have the majority of all the professional teams in the Valorant scene using our tool to prepare for all their major events. They use our tool to scrim against each other and track the stats from their scrim. They use our tool to scout and find new people to onboard onto the team and to trial new players. And to this day, yeah, pretty much the entire Valorant scene is still using our tool. And it's been super cool. We've gotten message from previous world champions that have been subscribed to us for years, and they come to us and say things like, yeah, we won the world championships, and a large part of that was we used your tool for like practicing. And if we didn't have your tool, it would have been a lot harder to do the same thing. And that is probably one of the most fulfilling things I've ever done in entrepreneurship, seeing how something we made ended up causing or helping this amazing team that I've been a fan of since I was a kid go on to win the world championships in their game. And to me, that was just an unreal experience. And the reason that we're not like trying to make this go super big, and I'm starting my own stuff, and my co-founder, he usually is either doing something on the side or he has a job while we were doing this, is because when I first started doing that business, I did not have any idea of what sort of like total available market meant. To me, I saw that when I played League of Legends, there were sites like op.gg or Blitz or websites that were used by thousands and thousands of people. And I thought if we created a Valorant website that it would be the same thing and millions of people would do it. And, there was a similar site in Counter-Strike called HLTV that I think sold for around 38 million euros. And I'm like, if we just make something of that for Valorant, I think Valorant could be bigger than Counter-Strike because Riot has a lot more reputation, I guess, running like very competitive esports, even though Counter-Strike is still pretty big. I think that we could sort of fill that same gap. And what we quickly realized is, number one, we were second to launch a tool like that. And because we were second, everyone sort of flocked to the tool that came first. And that tool pretty much sort of dominated us over the past 4 years. And we were forever in their shadow, trying to keep up with them and trying to get people to switch over to us. And it got to the point where we spent a lot of time trying to match their features. And we eventually got to the point where we were surpassing their features. We were doing things better than them. We were providing more data than they were. But what ended up happening was people just didn't want to switch. And this is where the first really big lesson that stuck with me, other than, picking an industry that has a wide market. And that lesson was, if you are going to compete in a crowded market where somebody is already the industry leader, I think I read this somewhere, but you probably have to provide 5 to 10 times more value than they do in order to disrupt their business. So if you wanted to compete with someone like Google, it's not enough to just be Google with a couple of added features on top of it. If Google already has the majority of people using them, you really have to bring like a lot more value than they are. And it just so happens that if they're already sort of solving the problem that people are using them for, and there's not really much that you can do, there's only so much you can do to solve a problem, there's no room for that 5 to 10x multiple, then what happens is you end up doing what we did, which is you'll spend a year or more just sort of spinning on trying to keep up with them and build slight improvements, but it's not actually enough to cause people to switch over en masse if they're already satisfied with what they are getting. And it took us a very long time to learn that lesson. And I have spent countless engineering hours, and so has my co-founder, on building features that are marginally better, or, that we thought people would like a lot more, but it turned out, it wasn't that important to people. And we wasted a lot of time on that. And I wouldn't call it a complete time waste, because obviously we learned a lot of lessons, including this one, from it. And I couldn't be happier with how things turned out, because I feel like the past 4 years has prepared me for all the businesses I'm going to do in the future. I think even though the results that we wanted didn't come to fruition, that what we learned from it is something that can set you up pretty much for anything I do in the future. I think in another business that I start in the future, or this business that I've just started right now, if I were to go ahead and start it, all the things I'm going to face in that business, I've probably faced before in the past 4 years trying to run this business. And we completely bootstrapped the company. So we ended up putting hundreds of thousands of dollars of our own money into the company. And for a very long time, we were unprofitable. And what we ended up doing was, instead of trying to compete with that site, we tried to pivot into sort of our own direction. And that direction was providing analytics for top teams. And when we first started doing that, we were the only ones doing it, and it caught on, and we got the attention of a lot of big teams, a lot of big names. We quickly started a subscription service, and we were charging the bigger teams around $99 a month and the smaller ones around $40 to $50 a month. And things were going well, but one thing we didn't know at the time was there are certain metrics you have to look at if you are building a SaaS and you want that SaaS to continue to grow and not decay. And some of those metrics include things like churn, which is how often people are unsubscribing or canceling their subscription to your service, but also things like whether or not people are using your tool on a daily basis. Is it mandatory for them to actually use it? What is the impact of them using it in their gameplay? And one mistake we made was we focused on adding features. Once we saw that there was a lot of traction from what we did, and there was a lot of interest in the general data we provided, we sort of just went heads down. We stopped listening to what people were telling us to build, and we just sort of started just building things that were the next logical steps to build. So if we built a feature that could do A and B was similar to A and easy to code, we would code B even if B wasn't really useful in the first place, and neither was A, and people weren't really asking for it. And if we paid a bit more attention to our customers and we talked to people and we realized that a lot of people didn't really have a necessity to use our tool on a daily basis, and we actually figured out what they would use on a daily basis and what could solve real problems they were having on a daily basis, and we sort of sidetracked our existing product into something like that when we had the majority of the market already there, we could have saved a lot of churn. We could have captured a lot more of the market, and we could have probably been a lot bigger than we ended up being. Eventually, later down the road, we did learn that lesson, and once we saw a decline in subscriptions, we did end up going back and starting to talk to people again and realizing, oh, we've sort of been building in this direction, but the meta, what people want, has sort of changed. And then we realized that and corrected our track and started building what people wanted again. And now, once again, we're at that point where we have a tool that people are using on a daily basis, and it's super impactful and super useful for them. Going back to my original point of picking a market that is big, we sort of chose to pigeonhole ourselves in a position where the majority of our value is for professional teams. And for a game like Valorant, there's only maybe I would say 100 truly professional teams, and then there's a long tail of semi-professional / tier 2 teams. So the majority of the value and the majority of the teams that are going to take their gameplay so seriously that they're going to use external tools are going to be within that 100, teams that are the best of the best. And once you've sold to all 100 of those teams and you have had them on board for a long time, it's really hard to sort of grow outwards from there. In order to go to a different game, for example, would be completely rewriting everything, because our infrastructure, our code base, everything we've done is so specific to Valorant that it's not really feasible to just make a similar tool for League of Legends or a different game. And because we weren't thinking of what the total market would be when we started 4 years ago, we sort of built ourselves into a trap where we're stuck at a market cap of X amount per month. And in order to break free of that, we either have to sell to the long tail of teams that are harder to sell to and they get less value because they don't take these type of tools as seriously, or we sort of have to step back and pivot to something that might be more general. Let's say, for example, a platform where you can find a coach for your gaming needs. There are a lot of platforms that have started while we were building our tool. There were platforms that started like Metafy, where they were just a coaching platform, and they were able to appeal to all the games in any genre because like you don't need to build specific architecture if you're doing coaching stuff. And if I knew that 4 years ago, I definitely would have chosen to build into something a bit more generic that we could then expand into more games a lot more easily. Some other interesting things I learned specific to esports: a lot of the times it's hard to make long-term relationships in esports because people are coming in and out of the industry. People are retiring at like 23 years old. A lot of the times people are getting canceled in esports a lot more frequently than others. We had a lot of bad actors. I think esports is highly unregulated, so it's sort of a breeding ground for bad actors. There are a handful of people that started competing websites with us that later down the line, it turned out they weren't paying for their employees, and all kinds of crazy stuff that I literally cannot make up, and I'm not gonna like publicly out these people. But there is so much more shady stuff happening in esports than almost any other industry I have been in or built in. Another thing is we completely bootstrapped the company, and we hired a lot of people at the beginning. We hired a writing team, a data team. We hired like people to help us do outreach. And there's a pretty important concept that I didn't understand at the time of being default alive versus default dead. At the beginning, we had zero revenue coming in for a very long time. At first, we tried to do the news and the tournament coverage, and we got a lot of page views. And to this day, we're still at like 500K page views a month. But in the esports industry, the advertisements for esports pay very little. So we actually make very little money from having a lot of page views. So we still ended up hiring a bunch of writers and data team people to try and help out. And very quickly, we were putting up a lot of money every single month from our personal, what we pretty much had saved or what we made from like working a tech job into this company. And we were doing it with sort of the promise of once we're big enough and once we beat our competitor, we'll be so big that we'll be able to make that money back. But in reality, I realized that the way we should have been operating was until we figure out a way to make money doing something, you probably shouldn't be hiring anyone unless it is absolutely necessary. And it definitely was not absolutely necessary. And we had a ton of employees to the point where we were just siphoning so much money a month and things weren't really changing. We had to make the tough decision of either shutting the company down or letting go of some people. And these were people that were with us from the very beginning of the company, and they were amazing. And we had so much fun like together and stuff like that. It was an amazing community that we had built, and it was really hard to let them go. It was probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. But they all pretty much landed on their feet, and they found like amazing opportunities at other companies. And we sort of represented like where they started off, and I'm honored to have played a part of their journey like that. So even though in the long run, if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't hire people, I'm glad that I learned from that experience and I was able to at least help a couple people start their journey in esports and stuff like that. And I think it's a nice, unique lesson to learn. A lot of people, when they start a company, they will get funding and they don't really know what it's like to have their skin in the game. Whereas I've put hundreds of thousands of dollars into this business of my own money that I earned working jobs like for the past like 10 years. And I can say for certain that I know the value of that money that I put into it. And even if the next company I start with is funded by investors, I'm going to run very, very lean, and I'm going to take whatever money we are using in the business very seriously and very frugally, because you can make a lot happen with a small team. And I don't think adding more people necessarily means you're going to have a better company. And the last idea I want to cover is the idea of building something you're passionate about. You hear this advice all the time that you should go into an industry that you're passionate about, because if you do, you'll be able to stick it out, whereas a lot of people would just end up quitting when it gets hard. And while I do love esports, and I literally still play Valorant to this day, and I didn't play Valorant for a lot of the times that I was building the business, I think there is a big difference between enjoying something and building in that industry. And unless you're literally the user of a product, which if you're building something long term, you might not be a user of a product for 5 years because, people change and your interests will evolve. It is very hard to live up to that standard. And honestly, I'm not sure if it is realistic. The thing that I enjoy doing is I enjoy building, I enjoy learning, and I enjoy the idea of just like creating value out of thin air and being the one that sort of guides the direction of doing that. And that's something I've loved since I was a kid. I've always been the person that's always been that entrepreneurial spirit as a kid. And I've always disliked working regular jobs, not because I dislike the jobs or I dislike the people, but just because I always feel like I could be building something faster and doing something that's meaningful. And the value and fulfillment I found from doing this, and the thing that stopped me from giving up intermediately as we were building this, especially when things got tough, came down to just enjoying the process of building much more than it came down to loving Valorant or loving esports. And honestly, I still love esports, but I probably would not build in esports again based on what I've seen. I love being an esports fan and doing esports myself, but maybe not so much the esports industry. So I think if you're doing it for the passion of actually building, it sort of doesn't really matter as much where you're building in. Sure, domain expertise is very important, which is why my next startup, I'm doing something in the creator space because I've been creating YouTube videos for a very long time, even if I'm not that good at it. And having that domain expertise is really important when you're building a startup, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm like in love with being a creator and I'm in love with like creating and I'm in love with the creator industry and like I'm one of my own customers and all of that stuff. I think eventually everyone might have the chance of outgrowing everything no matter who you are. And the thing that might keep you there is sort of like the love of what you're doing. And I know whether or not I'm working on that business or this business, no matter what, I'm going to be working on something. Even if I have a successful business that exits for hundreds of millions of dollars, I'm just going to start another business the day after if I haven't already started another business by then anyway. So I know that that's what I enjoy doing and that's what made me stick to it. And that's what's going to make me stick to it for the next 60 years probably. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. If there are any questions you have, leave them in the comments and let me know what you want to hear about more. I've done a lot of unique things that I don't hear many people talking about. And I'd love to just give you guys my perspective on things that you might find interesting. So I'll see you guys in the next video.